What's up, guys? It is IRGT85, and surprise, surprise, we have some video game news to talk about. We're going to kick things off with some big PlayStation 5 stuff. Sony has acquired at least, well, one studio, and it looks like they have actually acquired another studio with this that actually leaked out by Sony's Twitter account of Japan. And there's a big situation brewing potentially with the Nintendo Switch. Some people are looking at something and saying, hey, you know, something big is coming, but I kind of have a different theory on this. So if you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button, be sure to like and share the video. But without any further ado, let's talk about what's going on in the world of video games. And obviously we're going to start things off with the big Sony news. Now, of course, the PlayStation 5 not being at E3 2021 kind of put it in the back of the corner of the room when it comes to this stuff. People were anticipating Sony to potentially be there. Of course, they decided not to go there, and now there are rumors about a new State of Play event potentially happening in the month of July, which I think makes sense because outside of Horizon Forbidden West, we don't really know too much about Sony's second half of the year when it comes to 2021. Of course, Kena, I'm not quite sure how to say that, is a game that is coming out. There's games like Sifu, once again, another game that I'm not sure how to pronounce, and both of these games definitely have a lot of potential, but realistically, they are smaller games. People are expecting something big beyond Horizon, which could end up being a 2022 game because Sony hasn't really committed to a release date for this game. But of course, Sony has made a large announcement this morning, and they have purchased a studio to add to their umbrella of various studios that they have. This is something we've been seeing a ton in video games lately. Of course, Microsoft is buying up studios left and right. Hell, even Nintendo is investing in companies like Forever Entertainment, but Sony has purchased someone that is obviously very close to them, and that is Housemarque. Now, Housemarque should be a name that sounds very familiar because they just released Returnal for the PlayStation 5. Now, Returnal seemed like a cool game. I'm not gonna, give it crap or anything like that. I'm just not a huge fan of Souls-like and roguelike games and things of that nature. They're very frustrating to me. I don't want to throw my controller across the room and potentially break it because, I mean, it's like $70 for a new DualSense controller. But obviously, this game had to see some measure of success when it comes to game sales, and of course, just how Sony felt about this game, because now they have purchased Housemarque. They put up a big thing about it on their website. There was a statement done by Housemarque as well, and it kind of makes sense. Obviously, Sony does believe in this company. They entrusted them to do a large PlayStation 5 game. That was by far the biggest game that Housemarque had ever done with Returnal, especially when you look at kind of their back catalog of games, mostly smaller stuff. So definitely a situation that worked out well for Housemarque, and it also worked out well for Sony, and now Sony has purchased Housemarque. But it seems like that's not the only company that Sony has purchased, because Sony of Japan's Twitter account actually put out that they bought another studio. They did a little write-up for it as well, and then quickly deleted it, but I mean, it's the internet, so everything stays up, and that other studio is actually Bluepoint. Now, once again, Bluepoint is a studio that has worked very closely with Sony. They've done like one or two Xbox games throughout the years, but mostly they worked with Sony on things. And of course, Bluepoint is another studio that should sound familiar because they did Demon's Souls for the PlayStation 5, which was a game that a lot of people loved. Once again, another Souls game, so I never really got super into it or anything like that. But it does appear that Bluepoint is also under that Sony umbrella as a new acquisition for them. So two new studios, Housemarque and Bluepoint, and there's been lots of rumors about Bluepoint as far as what their next project is going to be. There's been rumors about things like a Metal Gear Solid remake or some sort of Metal Gear remake coming to a system via Bluepoint. There's been stuff about Silent Hill potentially being worked on by them as well, but I mean, I don't know. Like, both of those games sound great. I would love to see a Metal Gear Solid remake. I would love to see a Silent Hill remake in some way, shape, or form, but they're Konami games at the end of the day. Konami's a bunch of weirdos. Konami just announced a new Contra game for mobile devices. Like, this is not what people want. Why are you doing this? Why are you wasting your time? But let's not hark too much on Konami, because obviously this is very positive stuff for the PlayStation brand going forward. All these studios seem to be being bought up by these bigger companies, and as long as they use the studios in a proper way, it's not sort of like an EA situation where they buy up studios and then make them work on just crappy EA games, or a Microsoft situation where, they bought Rare back in the day and didn't really do anything with it. As long as these companies are being allowed to create games for these platforms and still have some sort of independence when it comes to creating their games and making ideas with them, I think this is a very positive thing. So does this help the PlayStation brand? Absolutely. When you're getting big studios like Housemarque and of course Bluepoint under your umbrella, this is obviously going to bolster your lineup going forward. And finally, there's some interesting things that have happened very recently with the Nintendo Switch that have some people thinking maybe something big is coming, but I'm not quite sure I believe in that, because you have to admit one thing. Ever since the whole Mochizuki and Bloomberg situation, where Mochizuki said, hey, they're going to show the Nintendo Switch Revision or Nintendo Switch Pro before E3, you're going to see games running on this at E3, and then it's probably going to come out in September or October. Ever since that situation did not happen, I have definitely cooled off on talks about any sort of Nintendo Switch Revision, Nintendo Switch Pro thing, because I don't know, like, it just doesn't feel right now. Like, obviously there is something happening, but is Nintendo actually going to go through with it? Are these reports that we've been getting from places like Bloomberg and Eurogamer even accurate? And it's just caused a lot of doubt with this situation, which is why I have cooled off on this, and I'm looking at things with a bit more of a skeptical eye. Something that looks like it could be involved in a Nintendo Switch Revision, I'm looking at it on the other side of the coin. Well, what else could this be? And something happened last night that had a lot of people thinking that maybe Nintendo was planning something big with the Switch very soon, maybe some sort of announcement or something like that, but now I'm kind of a skeptic on everything, so I'm looking at it with a different way. So basically what ended up happening last night was some Nintendo Switch maintenance. Now, obviously that's not a big deal. There's maintenance for the systems that happen all the time. We see it all the time with Nintendo Switch. We saw it all the time with the 3DS, where things will go down for a little bit because Nintendo is doing maintenance on it. But you usually don't see pretty much every service being worked on at the same time. And that's the situation we saw last night with various Nintendo Switch services going down for maintenance. Now, the Switch services that went down last night were as follows. There was friend notifications that went down, save data backup that went down, including Animal Crossing. There was the eShop went down, game update data and firmware downloads went down, and also parental controls went down. All of the span of one night. So people were thinking, well, this is big. Maybe Nintendo is planning something. Maybe Nintendo is doing something with the Nintendo Switch. Maybe they're going to talk about something. But I don't think that was the case with this situation, because you gotta remember, there was an incident that happened very recently with the recent Nintendo Switch firmware that kind of got swept under the rug. Basically, the Nintendo Switch got a firmware update and people were able to download it, and then Nintendo quickly pulled the firmware update without any real rhyme or reason as to why they were pulling that. We talked about it, I think, a week or two ago on the channel. Since then, we have learned why Nintendo actually pulled that firmware update, because it was basically causing some data issues with the Nintendo Switch. People who downloaded this firmware were unable to do things like update their games or even download games off the Nintendo Switch eShop without getting an error code. There were error codes popping up when people were playing games as well. It seemed to be a bit hit or miss as to who was impacted by this. Me personally, I was not impacted by this, but I saw all over Twitter people who were downloading this firmware update were running into some major issues with their Nintendo Switch as far as being able to download things. So what was this maintenance update about? I think it was about that. I think they were finally fixing the firmware update issue that was caused for some Nintendo Switch owners who downloaded the firmware update before it was pulled and then re-added back to the Nintendo Switch. I know it's fun to sit here and speculate things about a Nintendo Switch revision, but I'm just tired of it, man. Like, I don't know. Like, I used to be such a, a positive component of this. I used to think, yes, Nintendo is doing it. We're going to see it so soon. But every day that just passes by, it's like, I mean, what's the point? We're almost getting to a point now. Let's say this thing doesn't come out until 2022, if it indeed exists. At that point, it's like, well, why not just release a new system? Why not release a successor to the Switch? So was this some sort of hint about a Nintendo Switch revision? I definitely don't think so. I think this was more involved with the Nintendo Switch firmware update that unfortunately messed with some people's systems and basically just correcting it. But I'm sure there will be people out there that make this about the Nintendo Switch revision or Nintendo Switch Pro in a video like, Pro confirmed, coming soon. It's like, okay, calm down, people, calm down. Alrighty, so that is going to do it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to let me know what you think of everything in the comments section down below. What you think of Sony acquiring new studios? Is Nintendo actually planning something big, or was it what I said and it was just, to fix the firmware situation? And as always, guys, thank you for watching this video. Thank you for watching any video on this crappy channel. I sincerely appreciate it. Be sure to check out some other videos and stuff. We talked about some new release Switch games, whether or not you should buy those games. We, of course, talked about some games that I feel should come to the Nintendo Switch from Forever Entertainment due to this new licensing agreement. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.